Let's start our journey in the first gallery. We will explore themes such as how the land took its present form and was occupied by human beings, how over thousands of years, First Peoples forged powerful and enduring spiritual bonds with the land and the animals and began to spread all across North America. We'll look at the arrival of Europeans 1,000 years ago and the consequences of this new presence, and the establishment of permanent European settlements.
Canadian History all starts at the dawn of Indigenous history, with the Anishinaabe origin story. The story was passed down from time immemorial through oral history to the modern day. It is told by Joan Tonasco, an Anishinaabe elder, and is illustrated by an Anishinaabe artist, Jay Ojig. It tells the story of the otter who bravely assisted in creating the land after a great flood, providing the territory on which we stand today, and which is the traditional and unceded land of the Anishinaabe people. I'm standing in front of the oldest representation of a human face in North America. Almost 4,000 years old, this tiny ivory carving was found on Devon Island in the Canadian High Arctic. It is known as the Icebreaker Masket for the site in which it was found, but we call it the first face. It is remarkable for its lifelike portrayal, potentially that of a woman. We believe this because of the lines carved on the face, which are nearly identical to the lines Inuit women still tattoo on themselves. The descendants of the people who made this carving continued this remarkable artistic tradition. Known as the Dorset people, they lived between 2,500 and 800 years ago. They left behind tiny naturalistic carvings of the animals they interacted with, and this corpus of Dorset art is one of the museum's finest collections, and indeed it is the finest collection of such art in the world. The art depicts both Dorset people, who wore a unique high-collared parka and cap, and also myriad animals, from weasels to owls to Arctic hare, but the largest proportion of the art depicts polar bears. Dorset polar bear carvings are much more diverse than other animal carvings, and depict a range of naturalistic stalking and seal hunting behaviors. Unfortunately, the Dorset did not survive to the modern day, disappearing about 800 years ago, leaving no genetic descendants. Just like the polar bear, warming climate and the pressure caused by other humans in the environment likely led to their decline. I would like to introduce you to Nuv Mutak. This man is not an artist's generalized interpretation of an early Inuit hunter. He is, in fact, an intricate forensic reconstruction based on the physical remains found in the Arctic in the 1950s. When you look at him, you are looking back 800 years at the face of a skilled hunter and kayaker. His role was quite different than most of us can imagine. His toolkit, made mostly of walrus ivory and placed with him in death, not only speaks to the various tasks he was engaged in to survive in the Arctic, but also demonstrates an artisan's careful, intricate work. Amongst the tools found was an elaborately incised bow drill with a series of pictographs, his story, left to us by his own hand. Nuva Mutak's remains revealed that he was repetitively sitting in and paddling a kayak, holding and using a harpoon, and suffered through a very traumatic event that left permanent damage to his body, including damage to his legs, which probably required the use of a cane during his life. It is all there on the bow drill.
This object is the stuff of legend. It's an astrolabe. An astrolabe is an ancient navigational instrument. It allowed people to calculate latitude, their north-south position, at sea or on dry land. This one is not just any astrolabe. In 1867, the same year's Confederation, a teenager found it while he was clearing his family's land near Cobden, a short distance up the Ottawa River from Ottawa. The scholars of the time concluded that the astrolabe surely belonged to none other than Samuel de Champlain, the famous French explorer and founder of Quebec, a man known as the father of New France. We know a fair amount about the life of Champlain because he left us a large number of writings that describe the early days of the French presence in what would become Canada. The French settled in indigenous territories. In Acadia, they lived alongside the Mi'kmaq. At Quebec and elsewhere in the St. Lawrence Valley, they were the neighbors of the Innu and the Anishinaabe, or the Montagnais and Algonquin. The French, who were small in number and vulnerable, entered into an alliance with these nations. And so in 1613 and 1615, Champlain traveled up the Ottawa River in search of lands that were unknown to him and of their indigenous inhabitants. At the turn of the 20th century, scholars reached the conclusion that Champlain himself must have lost this astrolabe during one of these voyages. There is no evidence that this astrolabe ever belonged to Champlain. It's not impossible, but we will never know for sure. Even so, the Astrolabe remains one of our museum's treasures. Whether it belonged to the father of New France hardly matters, because more than any other artifact, it represents the exploration of the area and the encounter with indigenous peoples that was the foundation of the French colony. In the end, this navigational instrument from the early 17th century serves as a wonderful symbol of what it is to do history in the 21st century. It is to explore, to seek, to encounter others, to learn, and to always keep learning. In this section, we have a longhouse, a structure that was once built of wood and covered in bark, but that here is evoked symbolically. This module is about wars and epidemics. This is why, as soon as you enter the structure, you find yourself in a different, darker, more disquieting atmosphere. This is a place to think back on the human dramas of the 17th century.